I love that picture that Cindy found behind me, the one of all the people gathered to be the church, because we know the church is people. And right next to it, you see the picture of the stone wall. The scripture that Gary just read talks about Christ as the cornerstone and says to people that they are living stones, that they will be built into a sanctuary for God, that they are a royal priesthood. It's so important to know who that letter was written to. I know Gary said it was written by Peter because that is what it says right there, but of course, not really. We know that the letter from Peter was written in Peter's name, as was the custom at the time. That was what faithful people in the church did. What it meant was, in the line of Peter as a leader in this church, I'm writing this letter. And biblical scholars, some of them suggest it might have been Silvanus, who was a follower of Paul. We know that it was written from Rome, and it's really important to know the folks it went out to. Those churches in Asia Minor were made up of people who were household slaves and people who were foreigners in the land. Christianity is rarely successful in proselytizing among the wealthy. They pretty much have what they need, so it's tougher to get them to notice a hole in their heart that is really a Christ-size hole. But way back then and even now, those of us who are suffering for any number of reasons often find it easier to hear God's call. And it was true then. And so the people this letter was written to, mostly household slaves and foreigners. So imagine how they felt. Nobody had built them up like my grandmother built me up. No one had a great-grandfather, grandmother who said things like mine, who's always said, if you're good, you might as well admit it, because people are going to find out anyway. No one catered to their self-esteem. No one thought it was important that they grow up to be strong, self-sufficient people. They were pretty much worthless people. People who could easily be cast aside. And that's who this letter is written to. Imagine hearing with that kind of a broken heart, and some of us, maybe we haven't been slaves, but we sure have had times in our lives when our hearts were in small pieces. Imagine hearing that call. Once you were no people, now you are God's people. Imagine hearing that not only is Christ the cornerstone, and the prophet Isaiah wrote about the cornerstone. We read about it in Psalms. It's a recurring theme. You hear about it in Acts. It's woven into the New Testament, that concept that Christ is the cornerstone. And it's okay, you can get that God among us is the cornerstone, such an important piece that everything else comes up against it for building. But imagine someone saying, as even truly Christ says to us today, we are the living stones. Our lives were created to come right up against Christ, up against the living, eternal love of Christ, to become a holy priesthood, a people set apart for the love of God. That's still true, that power-filled, transforming love that is so hard to soak in. And Mother's Day for some people triggers all the wrong stuff. It really can. For some of us, we can remember every home-baked whatever and every nurturing story time we had with our mothers. But for many other people, they can remember every time they were just knocked silly, every time they were ignored, every time they were told to be quiet. This planet is not always easy, and it is certainly not always fair. And yet, in the midst of what can be toxic, God makes love flourish. Our lives are indeed intended to come right up against the cornerstone of Christ in such a way that we are powerfully strong. Only trouble about it is, you see that stone wall? It's true that you can see, well, we could all probably fit, right? Because some of those stones are really big, and some of those stones are pretty small. There's kind of different colors, there's different sizes, but the little ones are every speck as important as the big ones because they fill in those spaces and they make it all hold together. But the part I hate, especially when it happens in real life, is for those stones to fit together. You can kind of tell by looking. Some rough edges had to get knocked off. I hate that part. That happens. That's why family life is so good for us. Because if you have any rough edges, rest assured, they're going to get knocked off of you. If you are raising children and you have ideas of perfection and constant harmony and peace, you are going to get shaped off pretty quickly and made to fit together in ways you might not have imagined. If you had aspirations for your children and knew just where they'd go to school, just what they'd be when they grow up, just what they'd give you for Mother's Day, those edges are going to get knocked right off. But you are going to be built together as something much, much stronger. It happens in this church all the time. We have people who talk too much. We have people who are, yes, Sammy, she does it all the time. We have people who are hard to draw out. We have people who know just what to say. And we have other people who, darn it, if they would only figure out when to be quiet. We got all of us all together, but we love one another. And we know that we can work together for the love of Christ. It's possible. And even when we come together with stuff that hurts, stuff that feels not fair, the God who says, you didn't used to be a people. Once you were no people, but now you are God's people, is not kidding. It never ceases to amaze me. I know it's not supposed to, I'm a pastor, right? But it does amaze me all the time when God, first of all, God does answer prayers. And Jenny is a case in point. She kept trying and trying. She needs an important medical appointment and kept trying and doing everything she could to advocate. And it kept being put back, and it was taking way too long. And she needs to go. And so she comes to prayer group, and they set things aside. They said, no, we got to focus right on this right now. And yesterday when Jenny told me, and then right away, she gets a call, there is a cancellation, she's getting in sooner. God does answer our prayers. And why that's a shock, I don't know. But sometimes it is. And it's not just on in little individual ways. God is always working to fit every person and every situation together. It does, it amazes me. The other day I went up to visit Gail in Ormond, and I was driving back and I was listening to NPR Radio Lab. Don't you love that? And there was a thing about Butte, Montana. Ron is from Montana. I lived there for a long time. And Butte, Montana, if you've never been there, is tremendously ugly. It is, because there's a big mine there. There was a big mine. 1/3 of all the copper in the United States came from a 4 square mile hill in Butte, Montana. And as it became less and less profitable, they dug deeper and deeper. The mine goes over a mile deep. And then they figured out, well, why don't we just blast the top off of this mountain, and then that'll be cheaper. And so they did. And so there was a giant pit. And then finally it wasn't profitable to do anything at all, and they closed the mine down in the 80s. Well, all the time they were mining, they had pumps, and the groundwater that got in the mine, they'd pump out. Well, of course, they're not mining anymore, so who's going to bother pumping out the groundwater? And so they didn't. And darn if that didn't fill up with water. Well, it did fill up with water, all right, and the water that went into it was very nice water, but it met with pyrite, fool's gold, which has a lot of sulfur in it, other rocks that have sulfur in them. Well, you take water and you put it up against sulfur, sulfuric acid. You don't want to go for a little skinny dip in that, like I'm telling you. So anyhow, sulfuric acid is highly toxic. Also, cadmium, lead, there's all kinds of horrible heavy metals in there. If you look at it, the water is kind of red and iridescent. It looks toxic. And they have a program to try and keep water animals off of it because, of course, they'll die. And snow geese have been endangered for some time. And in the mid-90s, they had this terrible thing, big winter storm. The snow geese were flying and trying to escape from the storm, so they landed in Butte on this. There were like more than 350 of them landed on it. Of course, they land on the water, they're going to drink it. Every single one of them died, and they did an autopsy. And of course, their digestive system eaten away by sulfuric acid and lots of heavy metals in them. It was terrible. It's an ongoing problem. They keep trying to keep the birds away from that place. But there are 2 people who moved from California to work at the University of Montana, and they were originally studying, I'm getting to how God works, you're going to be amazed. They were originally studying sponges, but when they started working at the University of Montana, an extension near Butte, and the woman who came said when she first saw Butte, she cried. Just burst into tears, and then she started laughing hysterically. She said, that really is hysteria, isn't it? She was not happy to have moved from California to Butte. But, and then they went away on a sabbatical, and the University of Montana accidentally somehow let their refrigerator, where all their specimens, years of studying, unplugged, and they all died. So they had to start from scratch, and they thought, what the heck, we're in Butte, Montana, we might as well see if anything can grow in this horrific lake. And not really much, as you can imagine, because it kills pretty much everything that's in there. But then they started noticing, somebody came to them and said, I found this rope, the piece of rope in the lake, and the rope had green slime on it. That seemed really puzzling. And so they started doing research on that green slime, and then there's another kind of fungus that looks kind of black. And from the slime and the fungus working together, they're discovering possible cure for MRSA. They're discovering, because there's such a high rate of mutation, the environment is so highly toxic that the little things trying to grow mutate really quickly. And when they thought, how did these things even get there in the first place, what they found out was that one of the slime they're investigating, the only place that it was found anywhere else on Earth happened to be, how do I say this delicately, in the rectal areas of goose. Now, I don't know how the scientists goosed all those bees to find that out, but they did. But they did, and that's where it came from. And so this is what I mean about God. I know this is weird, but those snow It is horrible. It's a complete tragedy, a waste of life, and yet it's not. Through this, God takes seeds that will grow, seeds that have the potential to cure diseases, and not just that, process some of the toxicity out of this water. It's still a dangerous place, and it's getting more dangerous all the time. It's got over 30 billion gallons of this toxic stuff there. And right now, the lake is still below the groundwater level, but in 20 years it won't be. And when it gets up to the groundwater level, it means the flow, instead of flowing into the lake, is going to flow out of the lake, which means groundwater is, so they're really hoping these little babies in there can reproduce. But what I find from that weird and puzzling science story is that the God we love finds ways to take destruction, toxicity, and weave that together in a way that brings life. And we don't have to understand it to be able to see that that happens. So any hurt, any confusion in our own life, we can have the courage to hand it right over to God. And God will do something wonderful, right, Nikki? See? Amen.